Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abbaim. We're continuing in Berura Daf Hashavua. We're up to Seif Yud Beis. However, I want to try to take a look at the Bir Halacha Aval Bati Knesiyah Sheberetz Yisrael. The Mechaber said in Seif Yud Aleph. We mentioned yesterday the Shita of the Mechaber is like the Russian Tosfos. The Tanai only helps Bechorbanai. Nevertheless, there are basic tashmishim that a Tanai helps even be Yeshuvai. Bechorbanai, a Tanai helps with all tashmishim except for tashmishe maguna. However, the Mechaber said that's only the shuls and Chutz La'aretz. Avo bebating Yisrael Sheberetz Yisrael loy mahani shum Tanai. And the Mishnah said, well, according to the Magen Avraham, it would help for basic tashmishin. What's the reason why Tanai only helps in Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael? The Mishnah Berura in Sivkata and Lamed Zayin said the reason is that the shuls in Chutz La'aretz do not have eternal kedusha, because when the Goyel comes, Tifka kedushasan, their kedusha will leave. Masha'in kain bate knesiyos sheberetz Yisrael. By the way, what is that process that when Mashiach comes, Tifka kedushasan? That's based on the Gemara Megillah, that they're destined to be uprooted and go to Eretz Yisrael. At that point, Tifka kedushasan. Let's try to get some idea what this Bir Halacha is saying. Avo bate knesiyos sheberetz Yisrael ayin Mishna Berura v'hinei al etzem hadin shesasam hashulchan aruch. Regarding this halacha, that in Eretz Yisrael Tanai doesn't help, we could look into this. This is not unanimous. Why? The Gemara doesn't say explicitly a Tanai doesn't help in Eretz Yisrael. Only that in Bavel they're made with a specific stipulation, V'loi mi boi im nefaresh destama al Tanai asuyin. It goes without saying, if you explain it, that min hastam we assume it's built with a Tanai. Ein l'daik mizeh ala lafuke Eretz Yisrael de bestama einoim demal Tanai. All you could infer is that in Eretz Yisrael it's not built specifically with a Tanai. But what if you were to make a Tanai? Then it should help. Avlam hisnu befeirosh lama lo yoyel ukamayal kol tashmishe kedusha deisa behedya biyushalmi demoyel Tanai. You could make a Tanai on a mantle for a Sefer Torah. Why shouldn't you be able to make a Tanai on a Shul in Chutz La'aretz? Kol kaman b'sim kuf nadaler chamay sheik shav Magen Avraham b'sivkad niyadaled. Now we did have a svara that it could be for a Shul. A Tanai does not help as much because there needs to be a place dedicated for people to gather for tefillah. So even though the Shul does not have as much kedusha as tashmishe kedusha, legabe Tanai, we did have a svara that because of the need for Klal Yisrael to have places where people gather to daven, that maybe a Tanai is less effective. But now the Bir Halacha says on the second wide line, El afilu lefima shechiach hamagid Avraham mikam pais kavanas al Tanai asuyin hayne devavel hisnu aleim v'loi b'stama. But even if you want to say the way the Magen Avraham learns, that it's not that min hastam they make it al Tanai in Bavel, that in Bavel, they did make a Tanai. And therefore, it works because they did. But which implies maybe in Chutz La'aretz it would not work even if they did. You can't infer that in Eretz Yisrael it doesn't help. All you could infer is, in Bavel, they would typically make a Tanai, and in Eretz Yisrael, they would not typically make a Tanai. But you can't infer from there that if you did make a Tanai, it wouldn't help. El de Bavavel darken hoyel hasnes me'eza ta'amim shahayel hem Eretz Yisrael hoyel nasnim v'adin b'chol Chutz La'aretz gamkin lo hoyel Tanai al b'adin Yisrael shalahem v'af Bavavel gufa b'zman hazeh. Even in Bavel itself, nowadays, ein bar about to consider Shem al Tanai asuyos. Avlam hisnu behedya shaper mahani b'chol makoim chumay b'chol tashmishe kedusha. Ube'emes, the truth is, says, in other words, The Be'er Halacha is saying something very simple. If you learn Pshat in the Gemara is that in Bavel, Min Hastam, they made Tanaim, then all you could infer is that in Eretz Yisrael, Min Hastam, it's not a presumption that it automatically is built al Tanai. But if you did, l'chayr, it should work. Likewise, if you learned the Gemara, that in Bavel they would typically make a Tanai. And in Eretz Yisrael they wouldn't typically, but if they did, l'chayr, it should work. The truth is, says the Be'er Halacha, there is no source that if you make a Tanai in Eretz Yisrael it shouldn't help, except for this Seif in the Machaber. The only source of this is Tosfos. And Tosfos is l'shitase that be Yishuvan a Tanai doesn't help. Therefore, why? Mishum d'chsheyavay hagoyal. When Mashiach comes, or it's a lomer, the kivan dilva Seif. Since in the end, kisheyavay hagoyal, v'yiskabtzu yisab b'chal mekoymes hashanafoytzu bein hagoyim al Eretz Yisrael, v'lo yitztorchu lezeh mikdash ma'at. We won't need this mikdash ma'at. V'asidin li charev. It will destined to be destroyed. V'al karchach memela yeh nefka az kedushasan. Therefore, the Tanai helps so long as it's destroyed. Masha'in kain be'eretz Yisrael, that it will never be nisbatel, so therefore b'churbanoi, the Tanai does not help. But what about the poskim hold gam b'yishuvai mahane hatanai? Maybe taka, there is no difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Aretz, meaning the chiluk between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Aretz may only be Tosfos l'shitase that we're dealing with b'churbanai. But according to, let's say, Rashi, who holds that Tanai helps even be Yeshuvai, there should be no difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Aretz. Even though I would ask, yes, there is a difference. Maybe in Eretz Yisrael, since it will never come to be nisbatel, so the kedusha is oilamis, so therefore Tanai doesn't help. And in Chutz La'aretz, be yeshuvai, one day this kedusha may leave. So I'm not sure I hear the Be'er Halacha's kasha.
How is Kavana different from the Me'el of the Sefer Torah?
I hear. Why is it that you can make?
They charged me 36.
I hear that, but in terms of what he says, that the chiluk of Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Aretz is only b'churbanai in the world of Tosfos, but not be Yeshuvai in the world of Rashi. I think I could still make that split, even be Yeshuvai. In other words, the split is based on the fact that in Eretz Yisrael the Kedusha is Eilamis, and in Chutz Aretz it's not Eilamis. So why can't you make that same split be Yeshuvai as well? Okay, there's a separate question. We know Tanai helps even L'Tashmishei Mitzvah. Okay, which by the way, we saw, to remember where, that maybe it's harder to make a Tanai on a Shul than on Tashmishei Mitzvah. Anyway, let's read the upshot of the Bir Halacha. Hayotzi, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines before the end of the Bir Halacha. Hayotzi mizeh hasif. What emerges from this sif, umikol dvarenu hu diyei shloisha chilukim. There are 3 different levels. Hainu, kalus roish gadol. Great kalus roish. Kamay cheshbonos. Uschoik behitol. Af bebavel uvehisnu aser. Even in Flatbush, Muncie, Williamsburg, you cannot make cheshbonos, you cannot joke around, even if you made a Tanai. Bein bi yeshuvai ubein bechurbanai. What about tashmishei choil, sha'im b'hem kalas roish klal, muchach me'amagin ram demahani Tanai, even in Eretz Yisrael, chumay sheksal mishabura, v'gam zeh bein bi yeshuvai bein bechurbanai. And what about achila ushtia? In Bavel, you could eat in a shul when it's destroyed, and in Eretz Yisrael, you cannot eat in a shul when it's destroyed. What about to eat in a shul when it's standing? Nobody says you could eat in a shul. Unless, according to Poskim, you could feed aniyim there b'makom dachak. Okay, that's the Rashba and the Ran. What about a Talmud Chacham? Talmud Chacham could eat in a shul if it's otherwise it's going to disturb his learning. What if you go into a shul and you want to learn one day, and if you're going to have to eat outside, you're going to have to go home, and it's going to disturb your learning? I believe the Mishnah Berura said you're also allowed to. But as a matter of course, to eat in a shul, you can't eat in a shul, not in Chutz Aretz and not in Eretz Yisrael. You have a group, you're going on a tour, you need a place to eat, you can't eat in a shul. Sif Yud Beis. By the way, that's according to the Mishnah Berura. We said Rabbi Moshe says that Bizman Hazeh we're lenient. Bizman Hazeh we're lenient, and the proof is Tikkun, which is a Dvar Rishus. Sorry to have to keep on rubbing that in, but Rabbi Moshe says the Tikkun is a Dvar Rishus. Okay, Sif Yud Beis. Yesh li zoher milhishtamesh ba'aliyah shal gabi beis hakneses tashmish kavua shal genai. Now we're going to learn about shtibels. So the first floor is a shul. Second floor, the Rebbe lives on top of the shul. Not so pashut you're allowed to do that. You have to be careful from using the second floor of a shul for a set tashmish kavua shel genai. Kagoin lishkav sham, to sleep there. Ushar tashmishim. Ushar tashmishim. Other uses yesh l'stapik and mutal l'shtamisham. However, says Ramban b'chol zadavka beis hakneses kavua shenivna metchila l'kach. All of this is Dafka talking about a Beis HaKnesses that is set, that was built for that. Aval bayis, but a house, sheyichadu la'achar shenivna leBeis HaKnesses, but a house that after it was built, it was designated for a shul on the first floor, mutter lishkav olav, you could go to sleep there. So basically you built a house and then you say, I need a shul, so you're davening on the first floor, you could live on top of it. But if you have a shul and then you want to rent out an apartment on top of it, you can't do that. If I'm not mistaken, there's a frightening story mentioned in the Taz about something that happened to him because he lived on top of a shul. I don't know if the Mishnah Berura brings it down, let's see. Sif katan yud tes, salamates, tashmish kavua. Miloshain zeh mashma de lishkav sham b'derech mikra mutter. It's mashma this, that to lie down there, occasionally it's mutter, to b'derech mikra like shchiva tashmish shel genai. Because occasionally, lying down is not called a tashmish shel genai. Yesh l'histapek. You could be misupik. Now, I have a question. Let's say I'm learning in a shul, and I'm tired, and I have to go, so I don't want to lie down. Can I take 3 chairs and lie down in the shul? The answer is yeah, we had that before. That people are learning in a shul, that's Sif Aleph, the Mishnah Berura, Sif Katan Vav, V'hu adin li shain deshari. Yeah, you could. You're allowed to go to sleep. Okay? Which sometimes I have to do. Okay, so Sif Katan Lamed, but that's only if you're learning in the shul. You can't go into a shul to lie down if you're in the middle of learning, and otherwise, it would disrupt your whole schedule. In other words, you need 8 minutes, you need 6 minutes, you need 5 minutes. Says Mishnah Berura, Sif Katan Mem, Yeshel Histapek. In other words, Shar Tashmishim. Do we compare it to the second floors of the Azar of the Mikdash that are not sanctified? Or since it's called a small temple, maybe it should be compared to the second floor of the Heichal, the Kaimalan de Niskadshu B'Kedushas Heichal. Is it like the aliyah of the Azara, or is it like the aliyah of the Heichal? If it's like the aliyah of the Azara, it's mutter. If it's like the aliyah of the Heichal, it's asr. The Reb Shlomo Zalman in Shalsachus Mincha Shloimeh says, the suffix is not actually, is it like the aliyah of a heichal or the aliyah of an azara? Because the aliyah of a shul was never niskadesh. It's not niskadesh. However, since we find that the aliyah of the heichal is niskadesh, if you use the aliyah of the Beis HaKnesses, maybe it's like a bezayon. Also, the Aruch HaShulchan says, this is not really the suffix, because the heichal of the Beis HaMikdash, we find explicitly, they were makadesh it. The question is it proper to make a zikaron in the Mikdash Ma'at to the aliyos ha'heichal? But there's no tzad. Fundamentally, the second floor of a shul is neskadesh b'kedushas aliyas ha'heichal. Okay. U'lefi ma shekasa b'shari tshuva b'shem tshuvas pe'er adar yesh lahakel chutz mimakam shal gabe ha'heichal. Based on what the Shari Tshuva brings from the Pe'er Hadar, who's the Pe'er Hadar? The Rambam? Yeah. Based on what the Shari Tshuva brings from the Tshuvas HaRambam, you could be lenient for all tashmishin except for mamish on top of the arayin. Ratzolaimer ha'arayin sheshamuna chasei v'torah sham yesh zar shalai l'shtamisham. Aval bayish sheyichadu. What if you have a house that was made a shul after v'nira dekoshkin and b'shosh of nivna basic nesses nivda base dira lamala mimenu? Certainly, if when you built the shul, they built dira above it, the shari ladar sham, you're allowed to live there. The zeb bevadei lo yhukdash klal lamala. Mikomakim l'shtamish sham tashashu maguna ma'oid ketinuf uchiyoytze b'zeh nira de b'chol gamnei aser. V'alkein ein lasses klal beis haknesses am yesh bahadira shalamali mena davar maguna kazeh. So I don't understand. Let's say you have a women's section on the second floor. You can't have a bathroom on the second floor? By the way, what's the reason you can't have a davar matunaf? The Taz says, it's brought in the Shartsin Sivkat and Chav Beis, a davar ma'os will be mafsik the tefillah milalois lamala. So I guess that's only if the bathroom is over the sanctuary, but if it's off to the side. So does that mean it's usher to have a bathroom above the sanctuary? In Lamaisa, let's say the women's shul is not the same size as the sanctuary. You're not allowed to have a bathroom anywhere above the vicinity of the sanctuary? Yeah? By the way, it's interesting. The Dirshu quotes the Taz. The only thing is the Shar Tzion does not agree with the Taz. Look in the Shar Tzion Sivkat and Chav Beis. After Lefi Tamhad, let's see, what is it? We have to get up to it in the Mishnah Berura. Where is the Shar Tzion Chav Beis going on? Okay, we'll have to see, because the Shar Tzion says, "Be'emes ikar svarasai einoi muchrachas klal." The svar of the Taz that having a davar ma'os above the sanctuary prevents the tefillah from going up. It's not, that svar is not muchrach. Back to the Mishnah Berura. Alkein ein lasses klal beis haknesses am yesh bahadira shamala mimeno davar maguna kazeh. How about we're going to explore this further on Monday? Okay, we're going to hold it over here, and we'll pick it up a little bit further on Monday. Shkayach.
Recording stopped.
He says the story of the Taz on the next page.